fellow authors and acknowledge the work that they've done as well. One of the questions that frequently comes up whenever I have a chance to do a presentation is, how does a professor of management get to writing a mystery novel that's based in Detroit? Because they seem like seemingly unconnected events. But one of the things that becomes really important in writing is how do you make connections with seemingly unconnected events? And I want to give you an example of what I'm talking about. One of the things that I've started doing since last spring is to get back into jogging. And when I jog to music, primarily because mother's got rhythm and daddy's got rhyme. And I like for my body to rhyme when I'm jogging as well. And so on this one particular day, I'd finished jogging, gone upstairs, taken a shower, I'd come back downstairs. My wife was at the breakfast table. Joined her for breakfast. We were soon followed by my 16-year-old son. He came down, he said, "Good morning," and that was the first miracle. And then proceeded to ask, he said, "So, Dad, how's your job?" I said, "Well, I'm enjoying it. Get out in the weather and all that. I get a chance to listen to my own music, and it makes me feel good." He said, "Well, I'm glad to know that you're using the iPod that your mom and I bought you for your birthday." I said, "Well, I don't use the iPod for that. I use it for other things." He said, "Well, how do you listen to your music?" I said, "Well, I listen to music on my cassette player." So he was appalled. He said, "What, you listen to a cassette player?" I said, "Yeah, I have a cassette player." He said, "You mean you go outside where people can see you with a cassette player on your hip?" I said, "Well, yeah, that's where I have my music." He said, "Well, you can download any of that music. Why do you carry around a cassette?" I said, "No, not really." I said, "A lot of the music that I've listened to, a lot of music that I have access to, I can't download it." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "For example, one of my favorite artists is Aretha Franklin, who I happened to be listening to that day." I said, "Now, Aretha Franklin represents, for my generation, a group of musicians who had a body of work. They were singers who had a body of work." And I said, "Now, son, there's a difference between a body of work and a body that works." There's a big difference. I'm from that era when musicians could actually sing. That's right. And they did. Right. And the lyrics that they wrote, the lyrics were based on insight and not ignorance. And so I like to continue listening to music with that as well. He said, "But that's so inefficient. When you can just download it." I said, "Well, listen, let me explain something to you. So you obviously don't understand your sense of history here, and I'm going to break it down for you." I said, "Your dad, your Uncle Ernie, your Uncle Walt, and I are all part of that generation of folks who we would buy albums. All right, and on those albums, we would take it, if we wanted to put together some music, we'd take the album out of its cover," and I could see he was starting to sweat. "We'd take it out of its cover, we'd put it on the record player, we lift that arm, drop that needle right on that track that we wanted to hear, walk over to that cassette recorder, depress that pause button, record that song." Sorry. I said, we could do that for any number of songs as well. I said, the cassettes, they can 30 minutes, 45, or 60. What do you want? And his eyes are just starting to roll, I said, "Listen, in many ways, the mere fact that I and your uncles did this, we paved the way for what you all know as the downloading the playlist." He said, "Well, that's not possible." I said, "Well, think about it. We did that and set the tone for what you now know as the downloadable playlist." He looked at me and said, "You know what? You are not my father." He said, "You are an alien. You were supposed to be transported to the 1980s and somehow you ended up here. So you need to contact the mothership. Tell them their transporter is flawed and have them beam you back up." To which he grabbed his lacrosse stick and headed outside. Just going out the door, I said to him, "Well, I'll tell you what. When they beam me back down, I'll tell you about the 8-track. How do you get to